Well, it's my honor and privilege to introduce our final Freedom Fighter Award recipient this evening, and that is Notre Dame law professor Charles Rice, who is, was, and always will be a fellow Marine. Professor Rice passed from this world earlier this year, but he's survived by so many people, family, friends, colleagues, brothers in arms who were influenced so profoundly by this strong man of faith. And I'm honored to count myself as one of them. You know, I met Professor Rice through a mutual acquaintance, John Murdoch, a fellow Marine. John and I were roommates at the basic school back in 1987. John went on to be a tank commander. And after the first Persian Gulf War, I was an infantry platoon commander in the first Gulf War. He decided to go off to law school, and he went to Notre Dame Law School. And during his time there, he became very good friends with Professor Charles Rice, again, a fellow Marine. When I contacted John several years later, I had continued on in my active service in the Marine Corps, I told him I was interested in going to law school. And he said, well, I've got just the guy you need to talk to, Professor Charles Rice. And I remember telling John I was in Quantico, Virginia, and I was talking to John on the phone. It was like, it just seemed kind of odd. You know, in the military, you have this chain of command. You don't just get on the phone and, call your senior officer. I said, like, here's a, professor at Notre Dame Law School. I'm looking to go as a student. I just can't do that. So we hung up the phone, and John called me back probably about 30 minutes later, and he said, I just spoke with Professor Rice, and he wants you to call him. He's at home. So I'm all right. So I picked up the phone, I called him, and we hit it off right from that moment. Professor Rice is a father of 10 children. He served in the Marine Corps, retired lieutenant colonel in the Marines. He even went to Holy Cross undergraduate in Worcester, Massachusetts, the school that I went to as an undergraduate. So and he was a boxer. And he was more than a boxer, though. Professor Rice was a fighter, a true fighter for freedom in many ways. So I became interested in attending Notre Dame Law School. He said, send me your application. I sent it to him, and literally 2 days later, he said, you're in. And I said, would you like an LSAT score? And he said, don't worry about it. But he became, in many ways, when I was young, I was 14 years old, and my dad passed away, and he was a Marine, and two of my other brothers were Marines, and I remember growing up as a kid in a small little 3-bedroom ranch house in Methuen, Massachusetts, and at the end of the hall was my dad's dress blues jacket, and all of his sons would take turns putting on that dress blue jacket, so he had a big influence on us. And Professor Rice filled that role later on in life when my dad passed away, and Professor Rice was more than a mentor. He was a father to me. And during his entire adult life, he was a champion for freedom, a champion for life. And when I think about where my course is today, where I am, having gone to Notre Dame Law School, is because of Professor Rice. Even my first job at a public interest law firm, Professor Rice was the connection. And then even when we started up the American Freedom Law Center, Professor Rice agreed to be one of the founding, board members of the American Freedom Law Center. So in many ways, he was a plank holder, and we're very grateful for his willingness to step up. We've come full circle in some respects. My good friend John Murdoch, who would really wish he could be here tonight, he made a generous $15,000 donation to the American Freedom Law Center in Professor Rice's name. And here tonight to accept the award on his behalf is two of his daughters, Mary Hasson and Patty Doran. And Professor Rice, when I was in law school, I started law school with 3 kids. By the time I graduated, we had 5 kids. And he would often invite my family to his house for a meal, and Patty was still a high school student at the time. And we were so impressed with his family and his deep devotion to faith. And he's really meant so much to me in my life. And so in closing, what I want to is I just want to read to you what I had posted on our website shortly after Professor Rice's passing, because I think it sums it up nicely. And this is what I had written. Professor Rice was a warrior for God in the truest and noblest sense. He possessed a unique combination of strength and humility. And while humble, he was a man of great achievement. He touched the lives of so many people in a profound and holy way. He was a selfless and generous man, and everything he did was for God's glory. There's little doubt that upon his passing, he was greeted with the words, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." And so I bid farewell to my mentor, a Marine who will assume his post guarding the streets of heaven. Semper Fi.
On behalf of all of our siblings, my sister Mary and the ones who could not be here, I'd like to first thank Rob for that beautiful introduction. My father had tremendous respect for the work that both of you do, and for you as a person. As Rob had said, I remember being a high school student and seeing sort of this constant stream of my dad's students come in and out of the house, in and out of his office. And it was not hard to see that Rob and his wife Christine, their beautiful family, really held a special place of esteem among my parents. There was a lot of surface similarities, both Holy Cross grads, both Marines. I think you both shared that experience of being outnumbered by girls. You both shared that large family experience, and I think eventually you and Chris caught up to and then passed my kids, or my parents. When I would call and check in with my parents after moving away, we would always sort of hear the update about the people we knew, and so there was often sort of the running tally of, oh yeah, there's 7 Muise kids now. No, there's 9. Actually, there's 11 Muise kids now. So, so my dad took tremendous pride, I think, in, as teachers do, in watching his former students and watching you in particular grow and take on this really important work in the American Freedom Law Center. And I think beneath many of those surface commonalities that my father and Rob shared, sort of that Marine background, the Holy Cross Catholic education background, certainly a much deeper similarity in foundational beliefs, a shared commitment to truth, a shared commitment to life, a shared commitment to the values that make America great. And I think watching this next step with the American Freedom Law Center's establishment several years ago was certainly something that my dad saw as the fruition of a lot of those values that are shared and held to be really important. And so I know he was truly honored to be a part of this work. Thank you.
I want to say just a quick thought that what you're doing is so important. And it's important because we can't take freedom for granted. But I know for my dad, he was firm in the conviction that freedom lasts only, it depends on a moral people. And that is something, that's an area where lawfare is going to be very important. And a society is only as moral as it treats the most vulnerable. And that's why my dad, who was a constitutional lawyer, just had such a passion for the right to life, but also for anyone who is vulnerable. And so I applaud the courage that it takes of both of you to stand up and take unpopular positions, to stand for truth, to stand for those Judeo-Christian values. And so we thank you for all that you do on behalf of freedom.